Hi there, Mythfits. Welcome to my first Ask the Author video. I feel like there should be confetti. Is there confetti? No? Okay. Anyway, a few weeks ago, or maybe by now a few months ago, I asked my newsletter subscribers to ask me anything, and a few of them actually did. So here are some of their questions and all of my answers. Question 1. What inspired you to write? The number one reason that I started writing is because I fell in love with reading. Growing up, I never considered myself a reader because the books that I loved to read and actually devoured by the stack load were books that didn't count, according to people who have no business whatsoever telling kids what should and shouldn't be read. Because I loved reading like Babysitter's Club or Sweet Valley High or Nancy Drew or even Michael Crichton when I got into high school. But those didn't count, so I thought I wasn't a reader. And then after graduate school, I had a lot of time and I discovered a love of reading historical romance. And I would go to the bookstore and buy literally like a stack of like 8 books and take them home and devour them in a week and go back and get another stack. Like, I really wish that past Tera knew about the library. Anyway, so the more I read, the more I wanted the characters to do and say things differently sometimes. And I finally realized that if I wrote them, they would. Question 2. How did I find an agent and publisher, and how long did it take? I got my agent the most traditional way possible by sending her a query letter. At the same time, I was also entering a lot of writing contests, especially ones sponsored by Romance Writers of America. They have a lot of contests in different genres that have final round judges that are often agents or editors. And I thought if I could final in those contests, I would get my work seen by an agent or editor. And also, once I started finaling in those, then they started giving me some writing credentials to include in my query letter. So I sent my query letter to my agent, which was actually the second time that I had queried her. She rejected me the first time on a different book. And she asked to read more and then offered to represent it. And then she's the one who found the publisher. The total time from about when I started writing with the serious intent of becoming a career author until I signed with my agent was about 4 years and about 4 books. I finished 4 books. And then it took her about a year once I signed with her to sell to a publisher. And from what I've heard from friends of mine and other authors that I know, 4 books or 4 years is generally like a good average for how long it takes. Although there are always outliers and exceptions to any average. Question 3. What is your revision and writing process? That is a tough one because it really changes with every book. On every project, I have different challenges. I know different amounts before I finally start writing it. It really, really depends. Generally, I go through a long brainstorming phase, which is anything from just like thinking obsessively about the story, working on developing the characters. Sometimes I'll even do some free writing from the point of view of a character so that they can kind of tell me their story naturally. I also spend a lot of time trying to plot out the story ahead of time using any one of like several different versions of screenwriting beat sheets, especially Save the Cat and Michael Haig's 6-step story structure, just to kind of give me waypoints along the way. Once the brainstorming phase is over and I feel like I know enough about the story to start writing, or if my deadline is looming close enough that I have to start writing, that's when I dive into the first draft, which is the most painful and most difficult part of the entire process. I found something recently that actually helps me do that more easily, which is something I call micro outlining. Basically, I open this app service called Workflowy, which I will link below so you can find it if you want. And I will just, before I write a scene, I will sit down and kind of go through the whole scene moment by moment and write down what needs to happen in each moment. like, she's waiting outside of the door, she's really nervous, she's fidgeting, the door opens suddenly, she's surprised it's him, just so that I don't have to actually be thinking about what is going to happen next when I'm writing it, because that just makes it 10 times harder. So that makes getting the first draft done easier a little bit. And then the third part is always, of course, the revision process. I always do a self edit as extensive as possible before I send it to an editor or a beta reader. And as I'm writing, I will keep a list of notes of things that I know I need to go back and fix or edit or change, or something that came up later that I have to go back and plant from earlier in the story. And so I go through on my self edit looking for those things. When I get an edit letter from an editor or a beta reader, I will usually break those down into bullet points so that it's less overwhelming for me. And I will highlight them by how extensive I think they are. So if it's just like a little one word or one sentence thing that needs to change in a few places, I will highlight it in yellow. If it's a little bit bigger, like maybe paragraph or part of a scene or some kind of, changes throughout, then I will highlight that in orange. And the really big ones that I think are going to be challenging or may affect a large portion of the story, I highlight those in pink, just to visually give me a differentiation between how much work each one of them is. And because I'm a wimp and because I like to feel like I'm accomplishing things and checking things off my list, usually when I start my process, I will go through and do all of the yellow and orange level edits first so I can cross them off. But also, while I'm doing that, that allows me to be looking at the story with the idea of all those pink highlights, edits in the back of my mind. So maybe my subconscious can help me figure out answers as I'm revising. So if anyone wants me to go into more granular detail about specifics about how I write, when I write, what I use to write, pop them that question into comments below, or you can always go to teralynnchilds.com/ask to ask there, or ask any questions about any topic related to writing or my books or anything like that. So that is the end of my first Ask the Author video. Don't miss out on any of my videos by hitting the subscribe button. And that's all for now. So until next time, stay magical.